go.
Yay!
Hello. How is everybody doing? You might see my gorgeous friend Ashley Stahl is here with us. I'm trying to go live on Instagram as well. Okay. I think we're doing it, Ash. I think
Are we
we're
doing it?
Just love when technology works. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Right?
Yep, I'm checking my Instagram just to see if we have that live going. Drop in the chat where you're joining from. Oh, I see. Hey, everyone.
Woo!
We got people joining in. We do have the comments open because we are doing a multi-stream. We're here on Instagram. We're here on LinkedIn. We're here on YouTube today. We may or may not have some chat restrictions, but me and Ashley are always good with looking at the comments section after our lives, and I will be popping the recording to everyone via email, so don't worry, you will get us. But without further ado, I am so happy to have Ashley here on live today because if you don't know Ashley, well, I'm doing you a favor because Ashley is someone everybody needs to know. Not only is she an amazing entrepreneur, she is a viral TEDx speaker. She's a speechwriter, host of the U-Turn podcast. Her TEDx talk, How to Figure Out What You Really Want, has almost 10 million views.
Crazy. Yeah.
And it is ranked 80th on the internet. I mean, stellar, epic results with your TEDx talk. Insane success story from Ashley. She also has such a unique and interesting background in counterterrorism. And that has really fueled a lot of your expertise in helping people transition in their careers and bringing all of what she's learned from the Obama administration into her TEDx speech writing. So this is amazing. You have written 40 TEDx speeches for clients and 39 of those got booked.
Yeah.
Wow. Can we just round of applause? That is so incredible. Welcome live with me and us, Ash. So nice to have you. Ashley and I live across the country. I'm in Florida. She's in California. So sometimes we have to do these things so that we can actually
hang out.
Well, Ashley, I mean, we could talk all day, but we're here for a jam-packed 30 minutes because Ashley really has this really unique offer and this really unique skill set that most of us as coaches, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders are dying to know. How do we package ourselves as a TEDx speaker? How do we land the topic and title to pitch to bookers? How do we even go about the pitch process? Ashley's going to kind of really take us through her coveted proven step process today. So pull out your pen and paper, take your notes, drop in your questions. I'm also so excited to learn this personally, Ash. So first of all, just kind of let's go backwards. Can you tell us kind of the making of your TEDx viral sensation, how to figure out what you really want? And I'm going to drop her YouTube link, everyone, in the comments because it's a must watch. So tell us about the making of that, and like, did it exceed your expectations tenfold, 100-fold?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting because the first time I ever got offered to do a TEDx talk, I remember I won an award for my work in national security. It was like 2012. I was in DC and I met this really beautiful woman. She came up to me, we got to talking, and she shared that she'd just given a TEDx talk at the UN. And I remember looking at her and saying, like, I hope I get to do something like that one day. And she looked at me as if she was like a cartoon. And she said, I think you will. And it was like her tooth, like, ching, like it was just like one of those like cartoon moments. And I was in Istanbul the next week for a work assignment. And I'll never forget getting a text from her when I was in a protest. I was stuck in a protest. I was hiding in a Spice Bazaar because there was, tear gas in the air. And I felt a buzz from my phone, and I kind of like looked through at my phone, and it was her saying, I got you a TEDx talk and it's going to be at Berkeley, and nice to meet you. And it was like a fairy came in and did that. And I just had no idea how to speak. And I was lucky enough where I was working under Obama administration. I knew a couple speech writers who knew his speaking format, who had influence on that. And they sat me down and showed me how they write talks. And that structure was crucial for me. I don't think I would have known what I was doing. So that talk ended up being about figuring out your career path. And I look at it now and it's a good talk. It's not, who I am now 15 years later or whatever have you. But I always felt like I needed to redeem myself with myself and give a talk that was a true representation of me. And I have a book called U-Turn, and it's all about figuring out what you really want in your career. But I think the question I ask a lot is, who are you? Who am I? And I don't ask the question enough of, who do you want to be? And I think that question is really powerful when it comes to platforms like TEDx, when it comes to your personal brand. It's not just about who you are, but it's about owning who you want to be. And I don't know anyone that's stronger at personal branding than you are, Chelsea. So I'm sure you have so much you could say about this. You've been at it for so long, helping people with this and consulting on it. As far as TEDx goes, though, I ended up giving my second speech and I ended up pouring myself into it 8 years later. And I felt like it would go viral, and it hit the internet and nothing happened. Nobody watched it. And I remember thinking, like, what? This was supposed to go viral. And if you watch the talk that Chelsea put here in the chat, it opens up with a story about my dad getting called from somebody who claimed to kidnap me. And it's interesting because nobody watched the talk for about 6 months. And then one day it started going incredibly viral. And what that taught me, and it wasn't like somebody shared it, nothing happened. That taught me that virality is not something that we can necessarily obviously control, but it has a mind of its own. But going viral is not necessarily easy. But I have learned after writing so many TEDx talks, and my team, we don't just write the talk, we get it booked. So we have clients coming in that want to get their talk not only written by us, but booked on stage for them. So people are just deciding they want to do these TEDx talks. The biggest thing that we've learned in this process is that it might not be easy to go viral, but it is simple. You simply write the best thing you've ever said. It has to be your best work. And when you think about the TEDx channel, the TED channel, for people who don't understand the difference, like TED licenses out TEDx. TEDx is independently run events. The bigger events mean that essentially the TED brand is trusting them more because they have a license and a right to have more people attend, which means it's an act of trust from the TED brand. My team never books anybody for a TEDx talk that it's their first time running the event, because we don't want any errors on their audio or their coordination or anything like that. So our clients are getting booked for events that have been running before. But when it comes to, writing talks that really, and I love, by the way, somebody in the comment talking about going viral isn't necessarily a sign of validity. It's just the truth. And sometimes it needs to get to the right crowd. I love that. I also want to point out, some people come in and they don't want their talk to go viral. They want it to go to the right audience, and it's a smaller audience. And so I think that that's really important to be mindful.
I think that's just like a minute to talk numbers for a second, because I think we can get hung up on what virality means in regards to so many eyeballs. And I think people are very consumed by view count and likes, right? And that those types of vanity metrics are great, but are you reaching your ideal client? Are you reaching the people you actually want to work with? So while virality is great, it's like, sometimes quality over quantity is also just as effective.
Right.
Period.
100%. Yeah. And I think, obviously most people who come in, they want it to reach as many people as possible, but there's probably, a fifth of people who come in and they're like, this is a talk for doctors to hear about this diagnosis that I found in my research. Right. Which brings me to another topic. If you're a researcher, if you're an expert, the TEDx and TED brand have so much influence that if you are a medical professional, a doctor, and a researcher of sorts, chances are you're a pioneer in some way. You've come up with something. My experience of the TEDx brand is that they're going to be sensitive to you sharing something completely new if it's not seen as widely accepted science, because they have a responsibility as a platform to spread things for good. And while your research or whatever you found might be the best thing ever, until it's seen as more widely accepted,
that makes sense.
Focus your work and your talk on that.
That makes sense. So I think that there's a lot of like barriers to entry when it comes to landing a TEDx or TED Talk. And you do debunk like two of, I would imagine, the most common myths that are out there. And I would love for you to debunk them, because I do think that that is probably a lot of our conception around TEDx. And myth number one, like landing a spot on a TEDx stage can be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think it's a numbers game. It's not, and you don't need to be famous to get a TEDx talk either. I think that what I love about the TEDx platform is it's a democracy. And it's really, when I look at the people that we're helping, it's everything from doctors and New York Times bestselling authors. We also have activists who are in veterinary school and they're wanting to get their voice out there. And when it comes to the curators selecting people, there's a couple of things at play. Number one, why would a curator select you if you don't have a talk to show them? They get so many applications, and if they don't know what you're going to say, obviously their application doesn't require you to have a speech in there, but it would help if you show them what you're planning on saying. And it's hard because entrepreneurs, it's like a chicken or egg thing. Like, why would they write a talk that doesn't exist? But why would somebody book them if they don't know what they're going to say?
Have it, right.
So unless you're a very seasoned speaker.
Are there pre-qualifiers in this application that, like, if you don't have X, Y, and Z, you'll never get booked? What are the qualifiers that you see that are helping people get a spot?
Yeah, I would say continuity is number one. If you are giving a talk about fishing and mindset, you know, like you're a fisher person, you love fishing on the weekends, and you want to talk about the mindset that you learned through becoming a fisherman with your dad or whatever, but you're a project manager at a tech startup on your LinkedIn profile, there's no continuity. So it's not about having a big brand and having things all over the internet, but the bare minimum, your LinkedIn needs to make sense for these curators. They need to see something that makes sense. I think the second thing is people get really overwhelmed on how do I get booked? And I totally get that. It's a project. And that's why people are hiring my firm. But I always tell people, especially entrepreneurs who don't have revenue yet, don't spend money on a company like me who is going to get it written for you and book for you. You can do it. If you're not a good writer, you definitely need a writer to help you, because you do want this to be one of the best things you've ever said. And a lot of clients will come to me and say, oh, I want it to sound like me. And I'm like, I want it to sound better than you. Let's make it sound like the best you ever.
Like you on your wedding day, right?
You're on your best day.
Right? You're never going to be more gorgeous than your wedding day.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. So before we even get to the meat of the speech, Ashley, you got to know what you're talking about before. What is in that moon juice that you're drinking? First of all,
I'm drinking electrolyte.
Oh, electrolyte. Look at that moon juice. That mason jar just really caught my attention. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the speech, you can't write the meat unless you know what you're writing, right? The topic, the title. I think that to me is like such a mystery of kind of reverse engineering, right? From the title, what you're going to write about. But, for people who are like, all right, I know my expertise. I know what my specialty is, but where do I even begin with kind of reining in a title or topic? What do I talk about? What do I speak about? Probably is a very key question.
Yeah.
Is there a process that you can provide us that we can kind of have this self-discovery exercise with ourselves to refine what that looks like?
Yeah, I think people overthink it all the time, Chelsea. Like it's, people are, okay, so for example, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you have a business for pet grooming. It would be useful to do a talk that has to do with animals, because you're going to attract people who maybe have them or resonate with them, and they're going to be more likely to need grooming services. But you don't need to be direct. You don't need to talk about your business in your talk, right? You can give a talk about how animals have changed your life. The thing that, and there's continuity there, right? The thing about that is beneath the talk, there's your bio. And the first 80 words are visible, and then it says read more. And we can imagine that most people who watch TEDx Talks, TED Talks, they're not clicking the read more button because they're paying attention to the talk, but they are seeing your bio in their periphery. And so you want their eye to be able to identify you properly. So if you're going to give one of these talks, You're going to want to be really intentional about those first 80 words in your bio beneath the TEDx talk. We like to recommend that clients do some sort of pull question, right? So my talk is about how to figure out what you really want. So it could be something like, do you ever feel like you're totally lost on what you really want? Then join career expert, author, founder of Wise Whisper ghostwriting company for TEDx Talks, Ashley Stahl. It's like very clear what I'm doing. So I think you want to think about your lead gen in that bio piece. But it doesn't mean that the topic of your talk needs to be that. Another thing to think about is when I was working under Obama administration, I learned like a lot of his speaking, President Obama, regardless of your politics, his speaking format, he has a hook, he has an opening, he has something that moves you, and then he moves into points, right? So your opener, if you look at my how to figure out what you really want talk, the opener is about my dad getting a phone call that I was kidnapped and the emotional experience he went through. And it tells that story. But if you look at my talk topic, like what does my dad getting a phone call about me getting kidnapped have to do with how you can figure out what you really want out of your life or your career? Very little. So good speechwriters draw a bridge between a powerful opener and make it make sense for the rest of the talk. Connect the dots. So if you look at the work I did in that talk in 2019 that I gave, you can see the opener is here to grab your attention. It's not here to be clickbait, but it's to grab people's attention and to move them and to get them to trust you and connect to your soul. And so there's 3 different openers that you can approach your TEDx with. The first one is that one, the storytelling opener. It's a powerful story. You need to draw a bridge into your talking points. The second type of opener is more conversational. This works with people who, as professionals, they're maybe not as heartfelt. Maybe their personality is a little more rooted on, sorry, I'm having a bad hair day today. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Rooted in, their story is rooted in research and being a researcher, and that's how their identity is. They might not want to do a personal, heartfelt story that's really vulnerable in the opener. They might want to be more conversational. They might want to get on stage and say, did you know that your brain has this many, electrons firing off every minute? And they might want to shock people and move into their research, and it's conversational. Right. Maybe they're 50 years old and single and they have no kids. They can get on stage and say, I'm 50, I'm single, I have no kids. What does that make you think about me? Right? And it's a talk about judgment, right? And stigmas, right? So it's conversational. And then the third approach is kind of like both. It's like dropping a bomb as far as like a knowledge bomb, something potent, and then backing into a story. Well, I learned about this personally when I was 27 years old, and this happened to me, and they move into the story. So those are the 3 openers. And I think it's the title of your talk and the opener that make you go the most viral. So I know we talked about openers. As far as titles go, there's 3 different approaches I give to titles, or 2. I would say one is the open loop, right? So an open loop is not being straightforward on the title. It's like the secret to why most people get a divorce, right? It's an open loop. Like, what is it? What you didn't know about marriage. Like one thing you don't realize about marriage, the real reason why marriages fail. I know I'm kind of morose over here with these titles, but they're loopholes.
Yeah.
And then my title, how to figure out what you really want. That's what people are Googling at 3 a.m. It's very straightforward. I don't know what I really want. How do I figure out what I really want? It's a straightforward title. It's SEO backed. I think about the title for the talk at the end. And I look at both options, and I use ChatGPT to give me other title suggestions based on the one that I'm thinking of. I ask it what's more SEO optimized, which one's getting more Google searches. I also look at talks that are trending and that have gone incredibly viral. So these are just some initial thoughts on writing a TEDx talk, how to go viral. Again, I know going viral isn't always the end game, but it is a good one. So
I did get a bunch of questions in my DMs for when people saw that we were doing this topic today. And one question stuck out to me because I tend to get this question a lot when I'm on my discovery calls for potential coaching clients. And it's, how do I differentiate myself, right, in the sea of competition where everyone's talking about what seems to be like the same thing in my industry? What's your answer to that for how many TED and TEDx talks exist already, and how to carve out your own where it doesn't feel like everybody else's?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, people ask me this all the time, and I have my own stance on it. I think the cream rises to the top, and there's a lot of room. And sometimes it's good news if there's a lot of talks on something, because it means that people want it, especially if they're going viral. I think it's about you having your own take on something. So, for example, I saw on Instagram somebody wrote about life begins at the end of your comfort zone. We know this concept, but there's not a lot of space on the TEDx channel, I think, for sound bites that don't have an original sense of thought around them. So let me give you an example of what that would mean.
Yeah.
And this is my own thinking because I meditated and thought about this. People talk about comfort zone. That's a sound bite. You don't want to have that in your talk unless you're original, right? So what does that mean? I thought about comfort zone and I thought, well, what do people think when they see that Instagram graphic? They think they need to go do something, right? They need to go talk to the person at the grocery store if they're single and ask them out. They need to, if they're starting a business, they need to go pitch themselves for that big opportunity. That's what it means to get out of your comfort zone. That's what I think people think when they see it. That's what I think. But what nobody talks about with comfort zone is how much you need to be willing to face. So, for example, when I think about becoming an entrepreneur and getting out of my comfort zone, there's so much we need to face as entrepreneurs that nobody talks about. We need to face hiring people. One of the biggest things I've learned about hiring is how many people are struggling in their mental health. On ones that the person in me feels like crazy compassion and empathy around that. The business owner in me feels empathy for other business owners that they're strapped, right? They're working 1,000 hours and they need help and they have to manage people who are not well enough to do their jobs. And that's really hard. So I feel sad for the people who are struggling. I feel sad for the business owner who needs help and they don't know who to turn to. One of the things that I think COVID brought to the front line is like mental health. And I think it's a really good thing. It's also a really hard thing because more than ever, we have workers that need breaks, they need leaves of absence. And then we have the entrepreneur, especially the one that is like at the stretch where they kind of are the business and they're doing everything. And who they pay is like straight out of their pocket going to help and straight out of if they have kids and maybe they're not making as much as everybody thinks, right? These are the things we don't hear about when it comes to getting out of your comfort zone. It's not about the things I have to go do. It's about the things I need to face. That's an original thought around comfort zone. And the reason I know it's original is because nobody told it to me. It came to me. And so I think it's about, if you're going to give a trite concept, like for example, entrepreneurship, people talk about just start. That's their advice. Just start, right? We've heard that before. Give me something else that you think about that. And as a speechwriter, I'm thinking, well, why don't people just start? Can we educate people on what's keeping them from starting? And like, can we give them like a micro piece of advice that actually gets them to just start and see how easy it might be to just start? So it's like, there's a lot of trite advice, but it's about looking at it differently. My past life, when I wrote a book about figuring out your career and I had all these career coaching courses, I still have them hiding on my internet webpage. I talk about salary negotiation. I'm sure there's a lot of tips I gave in my module in my job offer course about how to negotiate salary that maybe some people have heard before, maybe they haven't. It's my own take on it. But what makes it original, what makes it unique in the same way for a TEDx speech is the way I talk about salary. I talk to my clients and my students who buy the course. I say, when you're negotiating salary, talk about it like you're ordering a sandwich. Like, do you want pickles? It's neutral. That little sound bite, pun intended, about sandwiches, it's my way of helping teach people how to understand something that is hard for them. So it's about being original in your delivery. Another thing you can think about in your content is being a curator. I think there's a lot of power in curation, right? So there's a lot of mindset coaches out there. There's a lot of psychologists out there, but are all those people reading 10 books a month? I mean, that's a crazy amount of books, but let's say, and they're able to say to you, Esther Perel thinks this about this topic. Carl Jung thinks this about this topic. This person thinks this about this topic. I'm educating you on the bodies of work that exists in the psychology discourse. Here's what I think about this topic based on all these bodies of thought. That's curation. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but I think these are some thoughts that come up for me around how to be original and how to stand out.
And I'm going to add to that layer because this is such an important element in defining your personal brand identity. Like, how do you uniquely separate yourself from all the other people in your industry or servicing the same clients that you do? And one of the things that I love doing with my clients is helping them build their signature method, their unique mechanism, their signature step-by-step process, because then it's unique to you. You own that method. It makes you have this different method than that other coach, that entrepreneur, that book. And it's your approach, and then you can brand that method. So like my coaching, VIP coaching, visibility, influence, profits. I have a 6-step process to help you get more visibility, influence, profits. It's also a great way to leverage when you're having conversations about what you do and how you do it for people. So if you're in the mindset of kind of refining your expertise to be a stronger candidate for TEDx, maybe start to come from the question of, what is my signature process? What is my unique method? What is my unique approach to how I do this for my clients to get this result? And I would imagine having that meet when working with a speechwriter like you, Ashley, that gives you probably a lot of context to extract, that unique something, to not make it trite and broad, but like to zero in and give something nichey and interesting and hooky for virality and for differentiation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, not everybody is meant to get out on stage and give a message. It's not their thing. They don't think in those terms. I really don't like that we have an environment where people think that the best people are the ones out there. I just think that's so ridiculous. And it is a stigma. Some of my best podcast guests are people that are not building a brand. Some of my worst podcast guests, subjectively, in my opinion, that give the least content are the ones with a huge brand. So I think that, and that's something that I really think a lot about as I'm building my personal branding agency, is we want to be a company that is the shortcut for people who are taking the long cut. Like, we want to be an agency for people who are out there doing real work, and they see the value of things like good social media or a TEDx talk, and they're down to invest in it. But they're busy doing real work. And I think that's the thing about personal branding, as at its worst, it's a delusion. It's the Tinder swindler. It's inventing Anna. It's pressing a blue button and doing a giveaway. At its best, it's self-honoring. It's showing people who you are. It's a reflection of your values. It's moving the masses in a very helpful way. And so that's what I'm really keeping front and center of my mind when we're building the business we're building. And right now our core offer is obviously essentially a TEDx in a box, right? Like, we book it, we write it, we do the slides, we do the bio, blah, blah, blah. But I do think as we keep building, I'm always keeping it in mind that not everybody's meant to be doing this stuff, and nobody's better because they're doing it.
So that's a great perspective to kind of keep us grounded, for sure. So, all right, you kind of just said you're writing, you're booking, you're building the slides, you're pitching it. So you're really like a concierge service to help you create the best speech of your life and to get it in front of the right booker.
Yep.
So tell us that, and so I understand that it's kind of a unique process and timeline. Like, it takes about a year. Tell us about that process, because everybody wants everything done yesterday. So tell us about the timeline in working through all those steps with you, and like expectation management, like what should people expect?
Yeah, we write the TEDx talk. Well, first of all, when somebody signs on with us, we give them like an hour intake form. And I think this is something you could do whether you work with a company like mine or not, is make a timeline of your life. Look at the most relevant events of your life, and make lessons that you've learned, and you can peg them up against moments on your timeline. What moments in your life and what lessons are associated with those? I think just knowing that. So our intake form is a deep dive on people. It takes them about an hour to do. And it's really reflective and personal. Then from there, we have 4 Zoom calls. The first one is really about, who are you? What's your goals? And how are you going to open up your TED Talk? What story is the story that you think is really important for people to connect to you, not necessarily related to your topic, but maybe. We advise people not to do 18-minute talks because they're incredibly long. So we try to help people shorten it, do like 10 to 12-minute talks. They have equal potential and they're less work for you to memorize because, yes, we recommend people memorize these. And in that long of a talk, you really can't fit more than 2 to 3 talking points. So the first call is what's your opener and what's your first talking point? Like, what's the general direction? We go off and we start to write. We come back to them the second Zoom call. We get their feedback in the opener and the first point. And then we brainstorm what is the second and maybe the third talking point. We talk about what that could look like, and then we go off and we write that, and we come back with a rough draft for the third Zoom call. We rip through it. Usually it's not too ripped because we've kind of been communicating every step of the way. And then we make the final draft, and those are the 4 Zoom calls. And that happens over 2 months. Our writers, most of my meetings are not with the client. It's with my writing team where we're, innovating. And then we present the talk. Once the talk is written, we hand it to the booker. The booker makes a 60-second video. And I advise anyone to do this if you're pitching yourself for TEDx. A 60-second video script about who are you, just to give the curators your energy, what your talk is about, why it matters. And that's it. And it actually hurts you if it's too professional. You want to do like a casual iPhone video. Good lighting, horizontal, that's it. No hat, make your face visible, that's it. And just communicate with them what you're focused on with your talk, why it matters, why you'd love to do their event. And then we pitch, and we pitch in 3 waves. We pitch up to 100 events in 3 waves. Obviously, we have a lot of relationships with different events because we've been doing this for a while. But we are really intentional about the theme of the events. Like, do these themes align with the type of speech? And we pitch those events, letting them know about you, letting them and have your video so they could see your energy. We wait. We do it in waves because we don't want to get a bunch of yeses back, and then we have to say no to people that we asked if we could speak. So the pitching can take anywhere from 3 to 12 months. And it's a process. It is seasonal. Like, nobody cares about anything during the holidays. So if you're pitching yourself for a TEDx October, November, December, you're kind of out of luck as far as getting eyes on you as much. But I would say 3 to 12 months, you just plan on putting yourself out there for these talks until you get a yes. And once you get a yes, usually they run 3 months out, 6 months out at most, 2 months out if they're running a little tight. Memorize your talk. And a 10 to 12-minute talk is, 3 to 4 pages. It's not as big as it sounds. So it's something I think anyone can do.
And it sounds like it's funny because when I think about memorizing something that's 10 minutes long, I'm like, okay, I'm not an actress, never studied lines. With the 15 years of public speaking, I've never scripted myself, right? It's always just, your content, speaking points, slides to references. But then you go, oh my God, 10 minutes. How can you convey so much value in just 10 minutes? 10 minutes is like a blink.
Yeah, it's true. I think it's a lot about the what and not always about the how, right? Like, we have a client right now who coaches people in their startup. She obviously doesn't have time in 10 minutes to tell them everything they need to know about a startup and how to scale it. But in 10 minutes, you can give them the what of what they need to look at and some tactical for that, for them to go figure out the how even further. Yeah.
I think that's why it's so, for people who really want to nail their TEDx, and also for people who are looking to invest in their personal and professional growth, because I do think that putting yourself on a TEDx stage takes a lot of cojones. It's a big stage. It takes a lot of mindset work, and it takes a lot of courage. So I do think it's personal and professional growth because of the, ROI that you can really generate after a successful TEDx talk. But Ashley, not everybody is ready for their TEDx moment. So give us a bullet point of, if you are this, and this, then you are ready for someone like me to work with you, Ashley. Right? Yeah. What's your qualifier for who you're working with? Where do they need to be?
I think there's a difference because like who we're working with, you know, they have to have a certain amount of revenue where this kind of investment makes sense for them.
Right.
We're a 5-figure investment. Is it 5? I'm such a bad, so yeah, 5-figure investment. So I think just to be ready for a TEDx talk in general, do you feel like you have a story? Do you feel like you have something to share? And does it matter to you that you have a brand? If it matters to you, I think the internet is like a bunch of islands, right? You have blog posts on an island, you have a podcast on an island. And these are all places that generate leads, right? The TEDx island, I think, is the most powerful island for your brand because it's a set it and forget it. It's a one and done versus I have a Forbes column. There's 700. I used to write for Forbes, no longer. There's 700 blog posts or something like that that I wrote on there. The effect of all of it is really big in my brand. It's a huge island, right? But it was one blog post at a time over years versus TEDx. It's one talk and it's out there if you do it right. So I don't think there's anything more potent than that. So if you want to have a brand and you feel like you're a good writer and you have a message, I think you absolutely should be prioritizing this on your calendar. As far as working with us, if you have, I would say like at least a seven-figure revenue, or you have access to the funds and personal brand is really important to you. You don't identify as a writer first and foremost, or maybe you do, but you have the revenue and you want support because you don't have the time. I think my firm, Wise Whisper, is a great place to do it. And anyone who is listening, who sees this, I would love to give you $1,000 off over the next couple months up until the end of May. Just head on over to ashleystahl.com/TEDx. And Chelsea, we can put that in the chat. And when you apply, just let me know you found me through Chelsea, so I can give you that discount. But yeah, I mean, right now we're booking for people to start in late May. We're always running a couple months out. The speech writers that help me write, I've had a ghostwriting company for 15 years, and these are the 2 best people I've found, which has been really, really special. And so we're not scaling quickly, and we plan to be a very small firm for just this piece.
Amazing. It's such a coveted service that you're offering, because Ashley and I have been in the entrepreneur influencer scene for over 15 years together. So when we started, working with the IBMs of the world, like it was just, we were so new, and it was so much infancy around building your personal brand, working with big brands, getting booked to speak. And it was like an enigma, like getting a TEDx talk, and you're making it so available and realistic and tangible for people to execute probably a huge bucket list.
Yeah.
And while it is a 5-figure investment, you have to look at it as an investment, right? It's a marketing expense. I don't know if it could potentially be a write-off depending on how you structure your business, right? So all things to explore and all things to consider. And whether it's the TEDx talk or the personal brand development or the content marketing strategy for your brand and business, it's all an investment in growth. And if you don't do these things, what does your business look like in a year from now, right? So I think, kind of circling back to the stepping out of your comfort zone trite topic. Well, I think a lot of people step out of their comfort zones by making investments in themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's scary. It's, it's making you step into an unknown territory, and you're taking a risk on yourself and also the partner that you're working with, right? Am I investing in the right partner? Here to advocate for Ashley tenfold on the hard work and passion that she puts into every single client she works with, every single speech she writes. Since I've known you, Ashley, for 15 plus years now, you've always wanted to be a speechwriter. Like that was always like, I'm a writer. This is what I'm supposed to do. I mean, her book U-Turn had massive success. And like, look, it took you almost a decade to get here, but you're doing it, and now you're helping. You did it, and now you're helping other people do it. And I really do also believe that if you're investing in a coach or or some sort of program like Ashley, is like you want to make sure the person you're investing in has personally walked the walk, talked the talk, done it themselves. Because they're pulling from that experience and what worked, what didn't work to curate, your success. So Yeah, and you're making me really think I need to like get serious about a TEDx of my own, and I'll admit it. It's been something that's always been an enigma for me too, like over there, but
Yeah.
not prioritizing it because I didn't know
Yeah.
where to start. I really
Yeah.
didn't know where to start, and you are making it really tangible now of like, okay, now I know where to start. Now I know who to work with to help guide me. And I feel like you're bumpers to like keep you in to success, to getting booked, to virality. So hopefully you all feel a little more empowered to be able to go and do this yourself. And Ash, just tell us a little bit of like the benefits post TED Talk. Like what type of ROI have you seen from yours?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I got like $500,000 in spokesperson deals, multiple book deals, a speaking agent. I went on a speaking tour. I tripled my keynote fees. So it's like my cup runs over with what it's done. I don't think anything has done anything for me like this. The amount of like private coaching clients, consulting revenue is crazy. I think that it really depends on what your talk is about and what you're seeking, and that those 80 words in the bio. But I do think that this platform is a place for you to not only make an incredible impact for other people's lives, but to make one for your own and your own brand. So I think it's really a no-brainer. And if you don't have the revenue, or you're in corporate, which a third of our clients are corporate professionals, executives, you don't have the funds to do something with a company like mine, you should absolutely allocate the time to do it on your own and make it. It is a huge line item in your time, but once you do it, it's done, and it's so worth it.
Perfect. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up today? I did drop everyone's link. I'm going to drop it in our comments on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. It's in the chat. I dropped it in the Instagram chat, but you can find everything on Ashley Stahl on any channel. Any final words of advice, wisdom that you want to drop?
No, this has just been such a great conversation. You ask great questions. I feel like I talked everybody's ear off. And I hope that this inspires a lot of people to like go get their message out there if that's what they're meant to do, because the world needs it. Like, we are going through so much, especially post-COVID. I think, psychology indicates the way anxiety works sometimes is that we have delayed onset, because when we're in an intense moment, we're in fight or flight, we're handling things. So I think a lot of people coming out of the COVID era, it's almost like we're starting to feel all the effects of that. And I think these TEDx talks are like medicinal for people who need words to help them through. So
I love that. And if you have fear of public speaking or limiting beliefs around your ability to do it, that was one of the patterns, talking about coming out of COVID, talking about the mental toll it took on all of us. I was seeing one-on-one client after one-on client, all these mindset blocks and limiting beliefs and a lot of fear. I think that COVID injected a lot more fear into all of aspects of being an entrepreneur and all the aspects of just like living in the world today, which was a huge motivation behind me getting my hypnosis certifications. And if fear is blocking you from working with Ashley, I love working with my clients on fear of public speaking with hypnosis. It's so powerful, and never let fear be the reason, that you don't put yourself out there or take a risk or, invest in yourself. So if fear or these limiting belief blocks are holding you back, just know that I am here as a resource to help you eliminate those blocks as well. One of my clients actually had such a fear of public speaking, was getting all these podcast inquiries, live streams inquiries, turning them down because she was so scared. We did a few hypnosis sessions. I gave her recordings. She finally committed to her first live stream, and she got a client from her very first live stream.
There we go.
So it's just, now's the time to evolve, take a risk, take a chance. And also, that's why I love talking with Ashley, because there's always this holistic component of mindset and professional growth. And so you'll get a little bit of that hand holding, I would imagine, while working with Ashley and her team as well. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me.
I always love talking to you, always love having you, always love hearing your Your wise words. And for anyone who wants to contact Ashley, of course, all things at Ashley Stahl. Mwah! Thank you, Ash.
Thank you
Hope
for
this
having
was
me.
inspiring for all of you. And we'll see. I'll be here next Tuesday for another awesome live stream. Details to come.
Yay! Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.